Clearly, Doan is making wild and imaginative assertions here. Acharya S., author of The Christ Conspiracy, was the consultant for Zeitgeist. However, when one examines Acharya's bibliographical material, it is proven to be a ripoff from the material from earlier authors cited in the Zeitgeist transcript. Some of Acharya's most cited material comes from The World's 16 Crucified Saviors by Kersey Graves. Any allegations of 16 other saviors who all resemble the same characteristics of Jesus is most likely based on this book. However, this book is an unreliable source. Even atheist Richard Carrier criticized, "The World's 16 Crucified Saviors is unreliable, but no comprehensive critique exists." Most scholars immediately recognize many of his findings as unsupported and dismiss Graves as useless. After all, a scholar who rarely cites a source isn't useful to have as a reference even if he is right. In response to the lengthy and detailed refutations of Zeitgeist, Acharya S. has recently responded in a short 10-minute internet commercial for her books. We will analyze some of her ideas which have not been previously discussed in this film.
Why is the information in Zeitgeist Part 1 not widely known? In the first place, because of blasphemy and heresy laws, in the not-too-distant past, people could lose their jobs, friends, families, or even lives for merely questioning Christian dogma, which caused many people to remain silent on these issues.
Here is Acharya's first excuse for not having any evidence for her facts. Yet Acharya does not even present any evidence for her excuse of not having any evidence. The blasphemy and heresy laws to which she refers were imposed by the paganized Roman Catholic Church upon Christians who would not follow the Catholics' perverted religious practices, and the only information that was suppressed by those Catholics was the Bible, because it condemned their actions.
Also, much of this information can't be found in English, but it appears in other languages, like Greek, Latin, German, French, Sanskrit, Hebrew, and Egyptian. Unless someone can work in other languages, he or she may never encounter these facts.
Now Acharya says the reason you can't validate the things she says is because she got them from other languages. And since we can't understand those languages, she is going to avoid referencing them altogether.
Many of these parallels between Christ and other gods and goddesses of the ancient world cannot be found in encyclopedia entries, and these seem to be where most of the debunkers are getting their information from.
Now she claims the facts cannot be found in encyclopedias and dictionary entries, yet she cites them. Notice the contradiction here. Acharya is citing the very sources which she claims cannot be used to validate her claims. By her own admission, she is not an expert.
And reading encyclopedia entries does not make an expert out of anyone.
Within 49 pages, she cites Wallace Budge 47 times, who is also cited 5 times in the Zeitgeist transcript. But the unreliability of Budge's work is even recognized by Acharya in the footnote of her companion's guide. She says, "I am aware of the debate concerning Dr. Budge's work, a controversy that some have suggested represents a form of rivalry not uncommon in the academic world or in the world at large. I personally have found nothing egregious about his discussion of the Egyptian religion in English, although I cannot vouch for everything in his hieroglyphic dictionaries, for instance, which are considered outdated in their system of transliterations, but which nevertheless appear to be sound overall."
Scholars in past eras were less specialized, and they did in fact make these connections within comparative religion, as my research demonstrates.
In reality, Acharya's research does not demonstrate or validate these connections. Even critical non-Christian scholars have rejected Acharya S.'s research, among whom is Dr. Bob Price, who said, "She is quick to state as bald fact what turns out to be, once one chases down her sources, either wild speculation or complex inference from a chain of complicated data open to many interpretations." One of the most intriguing claims made repeatedly in these books is that among the mythical predecessors of Jesus as a crucified god were the Buddha, the blue-skinned Krishna, and Dionysus. Is there any basis to these claims which Murdoch just drops like a ton of bricks? Again, she does not explain where they come from, much less why no available book on Buddha, Krishna, or Dionysus contains a crucifixion account. When Murdoch speaks of the Christ conspiracy, she means it. She really believes the people got together and cooked up early Christianity like a network sitcom.
Some of these parallels between Jesus and the other gods represent mysteries, such that these mysteries were not readily recorded.
If these mysteries were not written down, then there is no evidence. But somehow Acharya has made a case, despite the lack of evidence.
I incorporate many pre-Christian primary sources, as well as the works of scholars highly credentialed in the appropriate fields.
Actually, none of these sources predate Christianity.
Primary sources or the works of highly credentialed scholars. For example, the parallels between Christ and the god Attis, who was brought up in Zeitgeist, are discussed by Dr. Andrew T. Fear, a professor of classics and ancient history at the University of Manchester in England.
Even Dr. A.T. Fear, Acharya's source, says that the resurrection of Attis did not appear until the beginning of the 4th century, inspired by Christianity, not vice versa. Attis, too, with his strong emphasis on resurrection, seems to be a latecomer to the cult. The stress on the Hilaria as celebrating the resurrection of Attis also appears to increase at the beginning of the 4th century A.D. It is important to remember that here we are discussing a period of centuries, not merely years. They do seem to have been provoked by a need to respond to the challenge of Christianity. Obviously, this is one of Acharya's strongest claims in support of her facts, since it made the cut into her 10-minute commercial. But her own source, Dr. Fear, embarrassingly admits that these similarities between Attis and Jesus were borrowed from Christianity and not the other way around, as she alleges.
The idea of the Indian god Krishna's mother being a virgin is not widely known and is therefore said to be wrong.
As demonstrated earlier, the Indian literature says just the opposite, that Devaki had 7 children before Krishna was born. The Bhagavad Gita is then shown on the screen, which is misleading because there is no record in the Bhagavad Gita or Mahabharata of a virgin birth for Devaki.
We should keep in mind that shouts for primary sources serve to remind us that Christians went on a rampage to censor and obliterate everything outside of their faith. In fact, these censors destroyed a huge amount of the type of evidence that we're discussing here.
Again, she makes excuses for not having any evidence or proof for her thesis, and warns us against those who would ask for such evidence. Without any evidence, the Jesus myth and astrotheology concepts are negligible.
While it is true that the wise men, magi, or kings are not numbered in the New Testament, their gifts are numbered as 3 at Matthew 2:11, gold, frankincense, and myrrh.
The only problem here with her interpretation is that the number of gifts does not determine how many magi there were. For example, in 2 Chronicles 21:3, there were also 3 gifts of silver, gold, and precious things presented to the sons of King Jehoshaphat. Yet there was not 3 contributors, but 1. There could have been numerous magi. The Bible does not specify how many magi there were because it is not an issue like Acharya S. makes it out to be. Since the December 25th birth date and 3 kings are so crucial to her thesis, she is going to try anything she can to make it fit. There is also no early Christian reference to the 3 stars in Orion's belt being known as the Magi, as she also alleges. Next, we will demonstrate how the modern proponents of the Jesus myth theory and sources behind Zeitgeist and Acharya S.'s work are typically advocates of Freemasonry, Theosophy, and the New Age, which are all very similar belief systems whose goal, like that of the Zeitgeist movement, is the elimination of Christianity and a utopian society, or paradise, as presented in the Zeitgeist Addendum film. In one of her online articles entitled The Gospel According to Acharya S., she states, "Perhaps the devil brings peace and not a sword to humanity. Considering how many people have been killed in the name of God and not the devil, maybe the world is worshiping the wrong entity." She also writes, "The devil is divine." Also cited in Zeitgeist are Godfrey Higgins, Albert Churchwood, cited 6 times, and Manly P. Hall, cited 5 times, which were all members of the Freemasons' secret society. Manly P. Hall, a 33rd degree Mason, wrote on page 48 of his book, Lost Keys of Freemasonry, "When a Mason learns that the key is the proper application of the dynamo of living power, the seething energies of Lucifer are in his hands." Lucifer is a name frequently given to Satan in Christian belief. The usage as reference to a fallen angel stems from a particular passage in the Bible